Ridiculous Crime is a production of iHeartRadio.
Hey, Elizabeth.
Hey, Zaron.
I'm over here.
Hey. Oh, wait, where?
Yeah, over here. Hey.
Oh, over there.
Yeah. Hi.
How you doing?
I got a question for you.
These sunglasses are really dark.
They're cool looking, though.
They're super cool.
Yeah, what are those, stars? You look like Bootsy Collins.
You like the sunset printed in a hologram on the lens?
It's really dope. Are those
cool.
like those AI? Is that what that is?
I am 100% AI.
Yeah.
I am.
I appreciate that.
Thank you. Me too.
Fake it till you can make it, right?
Amen, sister.
So I got a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what's ridiculous?
I do know it's ridiculous.
What?
First, I got to just ask you a quick question.
Oh, you're going to do a reverse Uno card
Do
on me.
you know what's ridiculous? Do you own cowboy boots?
Yeah, I own
Yeah,
two pairs.
two
One
pairs
that I really
cowboy.
like and one that I should give away.
Okay. Do you wear them all the time?
Not often enough. I don't have cause. You're not going to wear them around the house.
Only
and
with
I'm not going to
shorts.
wear them like the safe way. Yeah, I just wear them at the beach with
Only
shorts.
with shorts, yeah.
It's a good look.
Are you in the market for like a new pair of cowboy boots?
I actually am. I'm
Are
looking
you?
forward to it, yeah.
How do you feel about cowboy boots made in Texas?
I have no problem with that.
I think that's great.
Sure.
I mean, that's like where they're from, right?
Yeah, let's say that.
Shoes were invented in Texas.
Yes.
Now, there's this company, Tecovas,
Mm-hmm.
Tocovas.
Whatever.
Tocovas.
I'm supporting you.
Tecovas, and which I thought would be like Tecovas.
Yeah, I
But
can
it's
tell.
not.
No?
It's Tocovas.
Oh, there it is.
Anywho, it's a cowboy boot company, and their boots run like $300-$400, which I think is like a good solid.
Yeah, it's a nice.
They're not cheapo.
Medium range,
Yeah,
yeah.
you're not gonna like run and have like your little
Your
toe
heel
come out of a
off. Yeah,
split
totally.
in the side of it, which would be so embarrassing and probably painful. Anyway, so they have these new boots that they're introducing, and they're rooted in Texas with a flair for the bold.
Oh, no.
They're handcrafted.
This isn't a mashup, is it?
With all the quality you expect from a Tocovas dress boot. It's the material that's a little bit different.
What is the material? Are we like past ostrich skin and alligator and
Human skin. No, it's
lime
not.
green gators?
No, it's the material that they use to make booths at Chili's, the
What?
fast casual restaurant.
Like baby back ribs?
Yeah, the red booth that they have at Chili's.
Yeah, sure.
I don't
Isn't
think
that like vinyl?
I guess.
I don't know.
I've not been
I'm
in
not
a
a chemist.
Chili's. I think maybe once. I don't really recall.
You really haven't been to a Chili's?
No, but I'm looking at photos here, and so it's like a deep red. Anyway, they've teamed up. They're making booth boots.
Booth boots.
Booth boot and scooty booty. Anywho, so there's a men's version and a women's version.
Okay.
It's a chili pepper inlay.
Okay.
A custom Chili's toe bug. I don't know what that means.
By the way, this is a mashup, and I'm disappointed
Shush. And a bold shaft pattern, which is what, anyone wants to hear. And then Goodyear welted leather soled and built to stand out like a Texas sunset. So you didn't know you needed those, but you do. And so they dropped on July 29th. I don't know if there's still some available. You can only get them online. So you can't go like test drive them and see how fast you can run in them when you're in the store.
Yeah, like you're a little kid.
The men's and women's boots run $345 a pair. There's also a belt. If you're not like fully committed, that's $75.
You're not fully committed.
Yeah. But that was inspired by vintage Chili's uniforms and crafted from booth material.
These things you find.
These things I find.
Do anybody I've never seen them in the wild. Not a single thing you've ever mentioned to me have I ever seen anyone. And I go to airports. I see like a cross section of the
airport.
country.
Let me tell you something.
Yeah.
I look around. I watch the news. I got my finger on the pulse.
I bet you do.
I look at these things on the internet, and I say to myself over and over again, "End of the empire."
I thought you said to yourself, "Screw Zaron."
Well, there's also that, but like, when you
End
see
of
these
the
things,
empire.
and these are all just the signposts to the end of the empire.
Oh, you better believe it. We're way past bread and circuses.
Oh yeah, no, we're at Chili's booth boots. I
Just
mean,
running out of ideas.
criminy, yeah.
Well, I got one for you.
Yes.
And it's a good one. Okay. This one actually is a question. Well, not really. It's a statement, but it's kind of a question. When you go to court to prove your innocence and the judge makes you do a crime to prove that you didn't do a different crime, that's ridiculous, right?
It is confusing and ridiculous, and I love it.
This is Ridiculous Crime, a podcast about absurd and outrageous capers, heists, and cons. It's always 99% murder-free, and what's that? 100% ridiculous.
100%.
Yo, Elizabeth.
Yo, MTV Raps.
Have I got a wild bit of jurisprudence for you today?
Love this.
I love this one because of how rare it is that a judge asks you to do a crime to prove your innocence for a different crime.
Or just to do a crime in general.
Yeah, like in court. Like,
Yeah.
just do the crime. Let me see you do the crime.
Go rob that guy.
So this one is about a famous art forger, or rather I should say infamous. Now, before we start, I have a quick question just for some table setting. What do you know about the painter Johannes Vermeer?
He's dead.
Very good. Ding,
Thank
ding,
you.
ding. Silver star for her. Now, many know the name Vermeer, right? And in the last 2 decades, his most famous work has been the subject of a book by the author Tracy Chevalier called The Girl with a Pearl Earring.
Okay.
The book is not about Vermeer as much as it's about the subject of his most famous painting.
The girl.
Yeah, the story focuses on this 16-year-old Dutch girl named Griet. She's hired to be a maid for the Vermeer household, and it's a tale as old as time, Elizabeth. Middle-aged artist becomes entranced by her. He's enchanted by her demeanor. She's quiet, intelligent-eyed, working-class girl. And the painter, he does what should surprise no one. He nearly loses his happy home as he falls for her and brings her into his studio and eventually asks her to pose for his most famous work of art.
You gotta love an imbalance of power.
Right? Now, that same story also became a movie with the title. It starred Scarlett Johansson as Griet.
Right.
and
ScarJo.
Colin, yeah, exactly.
That's what all our friends,
Everybody in the know.
all of her friends call her that.
Yeah, and also
I am not one of her friends.
Colin Firth, Mr. Darcy as
Kofi.
Vermeer.
Kofir.
Now, did you see that movie, Girl with the Pearl Earring?
You know, I may have not. I'm going to guess no.
I don't think you did.
It's like, have you been in a Chili's? I don't think so. Have
Yeah.
you seen that movie? I don't think so.
Now, I did not see it back in 2003 when it came out.
Oh, was that when it came out?
Yeah, because the question of will a 16-year-old girl remain the muse or become the lover of a middle-aged painter held no charm for me.
Yeah.
Now, in Anthony Lane's review for The New Yorker, he compared this film to the work of stuffing dead animals. As Lane writes in his review of the rather beautifully shot film, I have to admit, is that, quote, the danger with such beautifying efforts is that it risks turning cinema into a branch of taxidermy.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, which I'm fairly certain is not meant as a compliment.
No.
Now, in her review for the Atlanta Weekly, Creative Loafing, film critic Felicia Feaster wrote that, quote, Johansson floats through the film as a beautiful, pale question mark, the perfect projection for the fantasies of the men around her. Again, 2003, so kind of par for the course.
I love that we're just like, it was a different time. It wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, it was Nick. There are children who were born then, or people in college who were born then. Now,
Children who were born.
there are people in college or children, whatever.
20-year-old little babies.
Which this kind of gets at Vermeer's whole deal, right? You know, the 17th century Dutch painter, he's mostly known for his portraits of women, usually alone, set typically in a domestic setting, and they're captured in ethereal light and rendered in primary colors, red, yellow, blue, which is also why I don't go for Vermeer. It's just not my bag. Why don't I like Vermeer? Great question, Elizabeth.
This is so good.
It's because I like women as people, you know, like as human beings, not as
Right.
like subjects frozen in time to be gawked at. Like the most they can offer us is how they beautified the world of men. Now, seeing like young women doing domestic chores as light renders them luminous and exquisite, it just doesn't do anything for me.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
the dude's catalog, though, of masterpieces, it counts 36 paintings. That's in his life's work. Now, 21 of them feature young women doing mundane tasks like cooking, cleaning, sewing. And look how the light falls on some Dutch milkmaid's porcelain beauty as she stares rather vacantly, almost sensuously. You see my
Yeah, I
point.
get it, yeah.
Yeah, the women, they show no signs of real interiority, not like how the Mona Lisa does, or inner life of their own, basically. It's
Right.
literally just beauty that's skin deep. The art blog, I found this art blog, Museum Hack, they sarcastically put it, quote, a male artist sexualizing women who are just doing their damn jobs, groundbreaking. But I digress. Now, the important point is that Johannes Vermeer painted his masterworks way back in the 1600s, right? So since he's painted his masterpieces some 3.5 centuries ago, not much is known about the artist. And we do know in his lifetime he painted 45 paintings, and 36 of them still, continue to exist now in the 21st century. In this size,
Are they all like 36 bangers, or are they like?
for the most part, yeah,
Okay.
people all think they're pretty dope for the most part. Now, in the sizable gap between 36 and 45, that 9 paintings, and also what is known about him and what is unknown, what was created, what was lost. This is where our story takes place. Yes. Now, enter the subject of today's story, another Dutch painter whose name is Han Van Meegeren.
Okay.
Now, he was born in the Netherlands way back in 1889. Now, his father was a Frenchman and a teacher of history who taught his son to enjoy, taking looks back in time and realizing that there's more than just this moment. We are informed by the choices of the past, right? He also taught actually teachers history at a training college for teachers.
Oh.
So yeah, he was something of a taskmaster. Like for instance, as a punishment, he used to make his son write the same sentence over and over again. I'm talking like hundreds of times. And the sentence was this: I know nothing, I am nothing, I am capable of nothing.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Taskmaster.
Is it a different kind of parenting?
Sure. Now, I'm pretty sure you can trace this whole story back to that punishment and that one sentence.
Yeah. God, the psychic damage of that.
Right? Yeah. So it's wild to me how often criminals we cover are basically formed by their parents,
Yeah.
or if not the conditions of their life.
Sure.
Now, basically, P.S. Parents, please be kind and supportive of your kids unless you want to risk being embarrassed by them later in life.
True.
There's a choice. But again,
and there are
I
parents
digress.
who do everything right and their kids still wind up being criminals.
That's what I'm saying, where the conditions of life come in.
Yeah.
But anyway, Hans Van Meegeren's father, he particularly despised the idea that his son wanted to be a painter, an artist. In fact, he forbade him from pursuing art. Now, as a historian, you might think, but wouldn't he respect art and culture and all that informed the times that he studies?
Did he want him to study coding?
No. The guy was a small-minded man, I'll just put it that way, and he wanted his son to do something sensible with his talent. So he's like, you should become a draftsman or an architect.
It's the equivalent of learn to code.
Basically.
It's I hear this from so many people who are distressed when their kids want to study, a liberal arts.
Yeah.
And it's like there more and more companies are saying they wish that their new employees had studied liberal arts.
Because they learned to think.
They could think.
Yeah.
They could
express themselves.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. They can understand what's being discussed in meetings.
Yeah. They could fix all the problems that AI creates.
Yeah. Bring fresh perspectives.
Yeah. Rewrite everything that AI writes.
And now all those coders are being replaced by AI anyway. So that whole learn to code thing kind of didn't really help the kids. Well, anyway, back to his father who wanted him to be a draftsman or architect. None of this held sway with his son. He was just a natural-born artist. He knew it. He's like, look, I got to be about the paints. Now, his father, like I said, he wanted to be an architect, not an artist. So he sends him to this technical school so he can learn to draft and draw. Eventually, though, he finds teachers who recognize this boy's got talent. I mean, like real talent. So they help him to study art. They teach him to learn to mix his own paints and prepare his own canvases. And Van Meegeren, he gets trained on the works of his fellow countrymen, which are basically the classics of that would be what's called the Dutch golden age of painting, the old Dutch masters, right?
So Vermeer.
Exactly, Vermeer. So that era was known for its studies of light and vibrant use of color. So he's studying all of this. He's looking at their brushstrokes, their balancing of subject matter and how to render it so it looks like it's coming alive with light. And he ends up never becoming an architect. He goes to school all the way, but he just doesn't take his finals. He just bounces out right before he would have been qualified. Yeah. So at this point, we're in 1913, right? And he's now at the age of 24, and he decided, you know what, I'm going to become an artist. I'm doing it. And he enrolls himself at a school at The Hague, and he studies art there. He soon meets a fellow artist, a young woman named Anna de Volk, and together they make a go of it as starving young artists.
Nice.
To make money, Van Meegeren, he enters the commercial art world. And by that, I mean, he's painting posters for businesses. He's in festivals. He's doing vanity portraits of the wealthy. He's just trying to make a go of it.
Yeah.
His young wife and he, though, eventually they grow apart, mostly because of the money pressures of being young artists. And by 1923, at the age of 34, they get divorced. Now he's alone, and he just keeps working, keeps banging away at his hopes of becoming an artist, like a real celebrated artist. Not just that he's getting paid to do it, but that he enters the canon.
Yeah.
So at this point, he does begin to find some success amongst the art critics of the day in the Netherlands. His work is considered inspired. Some people call him, quote, a gifted artist. And he starts to taste success. And then in 1928, he remarries his second wife. She's also in the arts. She supports what he does. She's an actress named Johanna Theresa Orlemans. Name doesn't matter, but there it is.
Yeah.
And this is the same year when Van Meegeren would make another fateful decision in his life. Much like his new wife, he decides to wear a mask in his work. Oh. Only when a painter wears a mask, we have another term for that. We call them art forgers.
Oh.
Yes. Now, remember how his father made him write hundreds of times over and over again, I know nothing, I am nothing, I am capable of nothing?
Yeah.
Well, it seems that he took that mantra to heart and he made it his motive to become an art forger. I can be
Wow.
anything because I am nothing.
I am nothing, yeah.
There was another motive, though, a more personal one. The art critics of the day began to turn against him. They accused him of being nothing, essentially. This once gifted artist was left behind by the changing seasons of the culture and the art world.
Yeah.
Because by 1928, the art critics have moved on. They're no longer smitten with what he was doing. Now they're into these new art movements of the day, surrealism, cubism.
That's very common in that era, that you get trained in the classics, but the masters.
You're a great Baroque painter, and all of a sudden nobody wants that.
Yeah, now everyone wants avant-garde. And, it's also then you kind of do see the difference between an artist and a drafts person, so that if you were just taught how to do something in a certain vein, you're not creating out of whole cloth for yourself. So you're not following the zeitgeist.
Totally, 100%. So Van Meegeren's formerly once inspired works are now derided, right, as talented imitations of the Dutch Golden Era. And he was merely a talented copy machine of old forms.
Yeah.
Of course, Van Meegeren, he's hurt by all this. And I'm thinking it probably brought him back to the words of his father, which further incenses him. So in 1928, he decides if the art world thought he knew nothing, that he lacked originality, that he was a mere imitator of past genius, well, he'd show all of them, like y'all are wrong. And so that's what he does. He goes and becomes an art forger. He'll fool the art world and all those arrogant critics, and he'd hit back. He uses this so-called imitative talent for painting in the style of the Dutch Golden Age, which they still like the 1600s people. They're all about that, just not the most recent.
Right.
And he'll make them all look like fools when they fall victim to his ploy.
Because it was innovative then.
Yes, exactly.
But not, at that point.
So he takes himself back to school, only it was a school of his own devising this time. He begins to study the great works of the old Dutch masters. And for a few years, he labors to become a master in his own right, to stand shoulder to shoulder with them. He reads their biographies. He studies their paintings, their brushstrokes, their use of color, how they rendered light. But not only that, he also studied how they mixed their paints, how they stretched their canvases. He figured out from their biographies how they sourced materials and where he'd need to pull off his planned hoax. So he's also starts beginning to purchase old canvases dating back to the 1600s. He finds the same materials that they used, which is not easy. And he gets to work creating his elaborate forgeries. And he starts, basically painting the old master's works until they're indistinguishable from the originals. Like nobody would know. Then he focuses on one artist in particular, a mystery man because of how little was known about him, old Mr. Girl with the pearl earring himself, Johannes Vermeer. At that time, in the beginning of the 20th century, Vermeer was enjoying this retrospective or respect in the art world, especially in Europe. And Van Meegeren decided he'd fool the art world with their new fancy fave.
Okay.
And remember when it was known that Vermeer had painted 45 paintings, and then there were the 36 that survived?
Yeah.
This historic gap is what he'll exploit.
Oh,
suddenly,
I see.
there's going to be all these discovered lost Vermeers.
Yeah.
So in 1932, he releases one of his forgeries into the art world. A lost Vermeer is discovered. It's well-timed because at this point, there was another rediscovered lost Vermeer that had also resurfaced at the same time. So these two lost Vermeers are written about by this notable art critic, Dr. Abraham Bredius, right? He publishes an article talking about these lost Vermeers, and he savages one of the paintings as an obvious forgery. But to his well-trained eye, it's basically, this is clearly a fraud. But the other one, the so-called lost Vermeer, it's reportedly from his early period when he was doing like historic paintings and biblical paintings.
Okay.
So he says this is a true find. With the full weight of his authority as an art critic, he calls it an authentic Vermeer. And he adds that, quote, is one of the finest gems of the master's oeuvre.
Oh.
Yeah, this second painting was a fraud. It was actually a forgery by Van Meegeren. And he'd done it. He'd fooled the art world, right?
Wow.
So, yeah, his years of study pay off. His talents as a forger are confirmed. This is his first taste of revenge. And now he wants to go back to the buffet for more.
I wonder who forged the first one.
I do too.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't actually look it up, but it was just another
it's just
forger.
a fly-by-night forger.
Okay, so now that we got this ball rolling, let's take a little break. We'll dive into a healthy diet of ads.
Yum.
And when we're back, we'll see how long Van Meegeren can keep this new con going.
Yum, yum, yum.
We're back, Elizabeth.
Yes, we are.
You ready to keep this crazy train of cons
oh my
rolling?
Gosh, yes.
Now, remember how I said Van Meegeren studied the old Dutch masters and how he bought old canvases to pass off his forgeries? I want to return to that for a moment because as a science lover, I found this fascinating, how he conned the art world with his use of chemistry. Remember how he learned in art school to mix his own paints?
Right.
Well, he becomes a master of paint mixing.
Yeah.
Like from his study of their biographies, he, as I said, he goes and he finds all these sources materials. And then in the 1600s, this was like, you're basically buying materials from like itinerant men who bounce around in the world. I'm talking like men who are sailors who've been to the so-called New World or the deepest corners of Asia and Africa.
They're buying things off the Silk Road.
Exactly. They're buying also materials from other people who are in Europe who are essentially snake oil salesmen of the medieval period.
Yeah.
And so that they're sourcing like ingredients from apothecaries and alchemists.
Yeah.
The materials that also could be used as medicines, right? And those kooks went searching for ways to, turn lead into gold. They got all sorts of chemistry.
Sure.
So Van Meegeren does the same. He sources these same ancient materials to further his con in the art world, which I love. Now, I say if you're going to do it, commit to the bit.
Exactly.
He committed, right? He like a guy who believes he's Napoleon, he was committed. He finds an art dealer who traffics in paintings, like lesser paintings of the 1600s. He buys a bunch of canvases from that guy to get him started. He then goes and spends his guilders on medicines that modern apothecaries are still selling. So I'm talking like old lead, tin, yellow pigments, lead white pigments, ultramarine pigments. Also, he was getting things like lilac oil. And
wow.
Yeah, really cool stuff. And also Venetian turpentine.
Oh, wow.
All right, so the ultramarine pigments, they had to be imported from Afghanistan and then sold through Venice commodities traders. So it's obscuring where the stuff's coming from. So nobody can catch them. Nobody's going to be like, oh, I sold that guy this stuff.
Right.
So Van Meegeren, he starts using these ancient pigments, these rare materials to grind out his own yellows and whites and blues. And that way he can paint these same colors and these same effects of light that the old Dutch masters did.
Yeah.
The effect becomes indistinguishable from the originals. Now, if you plan to trick the masters, you got to go hard in the paint, pardon the pun. And boy, does he. I mean, it wasn't just the materials he uses. He also masters their brush strokes, like down so where you could not tell. It's identical. The guy, he's a really good artist. So his hand could reproduce the exact same touch as Vermeer.
The amount of time he must have spent sitting before painting.
Oh, yeah, just staring at the most intimate detail, like how the ridge of paint rises, where it falls.
Right.
So finally, to seal the deal, he also goes back to chemistry, and he starts playing around with things like phenyl formaldehyde. So he uses that on his finished works to age the paintings.
Oh, right.
Because they need to look like they're 300, 350 years old.
Yeah.
And then he comes up with a secret. He starts baking his paintings. So he figured out that somewhere in the range between 212 degrees Fahrenheit and 248 degrees Fahrenheit, or for those who in the Celsius, 100 degrees Celsius to 120 degrees Celsius. A quick digression, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
You know, I always ask you to convert Celsius to Fahrenheit for me since you lived in Scotland and I've never been out of America. Well, good news. I found a method that I can now remember. You won't have to do it. You take a Celsius reading, you multiply it by 1.8 and add 32 degrees.
That's what I
can
do.
remember that. Yeah, I've never come across that. So that's good news for you, I thought. No more dumb questions for me whenever I see weather from anywhere in the world. Now, normally, by the way, I think the metric system is superior. I want that on the record. But in one instance, can we all agree that Fahrenheit is the superior temperature system? Because
totally.
You say 100 degrees, that sounds hot.
I get it.
You say 37 degrees, I'm like,
no, that's cold.
What is that? Like, okay, for instance, the other day I saw it was 50.5 degrees in parts of Turkey, and I was like, that seems hot. That's 123 degrees Fahrenheit. That's like Arizona melt your car hot.
Yeah, that is.
Anyway, back to Van Meegeren and his art forgeries. That's just my little digression on Celsius.
Like that.
So to age his painting, he sets the oven somewhere between 212 degrees and 248 degrees Fahrenheit, or 100 Celsius, 120 Celsius, and that's how he creates the crackle surface of the old paintings.
The crazing.
Yeah, exactly. They also the craculaire, I think it is. Maybe I'm saying that wrong. But that's the final touch to fool all the learned art critics. They're like, oh, look at it. It's so aged. Now, fool them, he did.
That's very clever.
Completely. After his initial success, he goes to work to create more lost Vermeers because he's earning big money because that's like the artist of the moment.
Right.
So he creates one forgery entitled, quote, The Head of Christ. Then he creates another one called The Blessings of Jacob. And then there was The Adulteress. And then The Supper at Emmaus. And my favorite, though, of his lost Vermeer forgeries is the one called The Last Supper 2. It sounds like a Fast and Furious sequel, but set in Galilee.
Peter's Revenge.
Totally, exactly. Now, if you're keeping track, that's 5 lost Vermeers plus the original one that he sold off. Okay. So that's 6 in total.
Do you happen to know, is he working off of speculation of what the missing pieces were?
Exactly.
Okay.
People knew these. That's why he had to pick these titles.
So he wasn't just grasping at straws.
Exactly.
On that
He's got to match titles with works. And so he's going, this should be the subject matter. And he's studying the old and older era painters like Caravaggio to kind of like figure out this would have been how we rendered this biblical scene.
Sure.
So at this point, remember there's 9 lost Vermeers in total, and now he's found 6 of them. Just a lucky guy.
Amazing.
But the art
Does
world
he
believes
say
it.
where he's finding them, like in a cave somewhere?
Oh, he starts acting like he's an art collector and he's just digging around and this is his specialty.
Got it.
So people are like, oh man, this guy's amazing. He just hunts for Vermeers and he's able to spot them with his trained eye.
You think someone would be like, well, where'd you hunt that one up?
Yeah, I'm sure he
buddy?
can come up with a story.
He's like, it was at the Goodwill.
Now, the greatest con he pulls had to be the supper at Emos, which is reported to be Vermeer's finest lost work. Everyone's like, I can't believe you found the masterpiece, right?
It is so good.
Totally. So to pull off his hoax, he finds this canvas from the 1600s that has the exact same dimensions that are known for the supper at Emos. And he mixes his own paints using his techniques from the old Dutch masters, the ancient materials, all that. Then he bakes them up using his oven techniques, so the craquelure was all convincing. To verify his hoax, he has this art critic, the same one from before, Dr. Abraham Bredius.
Yeah.
He declares the painting to not just be authentic, but was, quote, the masterpiece of Johannes Vermeer.
Oh.
Yes. But not only that, Van Meeren's techniques of his forgeries beat all the tests of the day that they could use to test it.
Yeah.
This is before we had polonium testing and looking and like X-ray tomography. Actually, no, they used X-ray tomography, but later on they used like much more deeply penetrating stuff.
Yeah.
So at this point, they were doing like pigment analysis, microscope examinations of the canvas, which dates to the right time.
Yeah.
And then they did do basic X-ray techniques. So it's like, oh, yes, this is clearly the right thing.
Right.
So once the forgery is reported to be confirmed as a true lost Vermeer, and this is in 1937, the painting sells for millions. Millions.
Wow.
Yeah, right? The lost work gets celebrated as a true masterwork. It gets hung in a gallery in Rotterdam. It's the belle of the ball for this gallery. And it's seen as evidence that Vermeer had been inspired by the works of Caravaggio, which leads the art world to start reconsidering how the old Dutch masters were inspired by the Italians. Now his forgeries are rewriting art history.
That's so crazy.
Yeah, it's a big deal. So then a challenge for his forgeries pops up, something he could have never anticipated. Elizabeth, what happened in Europe in 1939?
I was going to say, he sells this for millions in 37, and I'm like, oh, art in the late 30s, and yeah.
Yep. World War II pops off.
World War II.
So in the years prior to the official start of World War II, the Nazis had been coveting great European artworks as evidence of the superiority of the Aryan race, right? So a Dutch master like Vermeer was seen as this perfect exemplar of the so-called like Volksschein art or whatever, like people's art, and like the simple pastoral life and everything. And it becomes this exemplar of their so-called master race self-delusion.
Right.
So many great works from this period end up being purchased by the Nazis, but also many are being straight up stolen by prominent Jewish families or from prominent Jewish families after the families get sent off to the camps.
Right.
In the art world, this sad and like truly tragic time is basically extends from 33 all the way through the war to 45.
Yeah. And
it creates this black hole of provenance because you cannot prove the painting. So people have to go and say, oh, that looks like a Vermeer, that looks like a Van Gogh, right?
Right.
So it becomes very difficult to know the true story of where a painting or a sculpture or other masterpiece comes from. And this black hole of provenance, it's still an issue today. Many art detectives, they do their work certifying masterpieces that were lost in the pre-war and war years, and also trying to return them to the families from whom the art was stolen. And there's a lot of court cases about this, and like trying to prove it.
You have to be very broad in your understanding of how to prove up that provenance.
Exactly.
Because if it's stolen from a family that
they weren't given receipts.
And all of their receipts, all of their paperwork is gone.
Was gone too, exactly.
So you don't have...
You have to look for pictures that was in the family home.
And you have to hope that there are those surviving pictures that they weren't, Yeah,
you have to hope somebody else had the picture that they took in your home with it,
Exactly.
So in these pre-war years and during the Nazi occupation of the Netherlands, Van Meegeren is still working, selling his forgeries. In particular, he sold one of his Vermeer forgeries to a Dutch art dealer who then turned around and sold it to the Nazis. And not just any old Nazi. The forgery, it was dubbed the adulteress or Christ with the adulteress. It was sold to Reich Marshal Hermann Göring.
Oh, God.
Yeah, the head of the German Luftwaffe, the architect of the Gestapo.
Oh, God.
An infamous lover of the finer things in life. Göring, he collected priceless wines. He had a fine artwork collection. He liked to surround himself in beauty and delicacy as he spread pain and suffering all around the world. So this Vermeer forgery, it's coveted by Göring. At first, he hung the painting, Christ with the adulteress, in his office. And later on, as the war was ending, he made sure to take it with him and his family when he went into hiding. And to ensure that this painting stayed safe from the British and American bombs, Göring safeguarded the masterpiece deep in this Austrian salt mine. Then the Soviet Union, they reach Berlin, the Nazi regime collapses, and being too much of a coward to kill himself, Göring finds himself on trial in Nuremberg to face justice for the horrifying crimes that he'd perpetrated.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the forged painting gets recovered from that Austrian salt mine by the Americans.
Oh, the monument.
Yes,
man.
exactly. So in this instance, there was a paperwork trail that tracked this painting back to the Dutch art dealer. And then from there, it went back to Van Meegeren. That would become a big problem for the art forger because he was now on the record as a Nazi collaborator who'd sold off Dutch masterpieces and cultural history to the hated Nazi regime.
Yeah.
So Van Meegeren gets arrested, charged with aiding and abetting the Nazis in their heinous crimes against humanity. Although he hadn't directly sold the painting to Göring, he might as well have.
Because he knew that's where it was going to go.
Yeah, exactly. In the eyes of the Dutch, he was a Nazi collaborator. And during the Nazi occupation, he'd certainly lived well. He hadn't mind taking Nazi money for artworks.
Then yeah.
He was seen like hanging out with Nazis. So the punishment for that was death.
I think that you know, if you're not outspoken against the Nazis, you're a Nazi.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. And he had like, some people say fascist leaning, some people say he was an anti-fascist and just pretending. That couldn't be known, but there was plenty of him at a party, plenty of him getting paid to sell a painting to a Nazi.
Well, and like there's the thing, you think, oh, he's just pretending to like get by with the Nazis, right?
Yeah.
But you're not just pretending if you're living high on the hog.
Yes,
and
while everyone else is suffering.
You're just living this luxurious life. That there are ways to like just get by and keep your head down.
Exactly.
And then there's like
you were at the
don't
ball.
mind if I do.
Exactly. So faced now with the prospect of a death sentence, because that's the punishment for being a Nazi collaborator,
there it is.
The art forger is faced with a very unique legal choice. Either he has to admit that he was a forger who created the lost and found masterpiece, which would carry its own penalties, and would unmask him and all of the works that he allegedly found.
Yeah.
Or he could, keep his secret and lose his life.
Oh, I would, yeah.
Obviously not a hard choice to make.
No.
I mean, he'd already proven his father wrong. He was indeed somebody. He was not nothing. He was a great artist, or at least a great forger. And he'd already gotten his revenge on the art world for rejecting him and labeling him a once talented and gifted artist who lacked originality.
Yeah.
But if he admitted he was an art forger to save his life, he would unmask himself and he'd once again be nothing. Essentially, his father would be right. He would be the unoriginal artist that the art world determined him to be.
Okay.
So it was like kind of a psychological stumbling block.
Yeah.
So anyway, what does he do? How does he save his life and not lose everything in the process and become what he's always been charged by others?
Great question, Elizabeth. Thank you for asking.
Yeah. Also, not to mention the fortune he's made from all the forgeries. He's also going to lose that. And he's got like millions and millions and millions.
Right.
So what does he do? Well, after these messages, Elizabeth, we'll see how Van Meegeren plays the hand he's been dealt. Let's get back in 2 and 2.
Ow.
Elizabeth.
Zaron.
We're back.
Zaron.
So what are you digging this strange tale of art forgery and provenance and revenge against the world?
It's so nuanced. There's so many little pieces to it. I like
It's not an easy one. Now, if you were Han Van Meegeren, like what do? Do you admit what you've done? Do you take your secret to the grave? Do you try to like play I forged this one, but that's it? I mean, like how do you can't control what happens once you start telling the truth.
Well, I think if I'm a weasel like him, I say, yeah, guess what? I faked them all and I did it to pull one over on these evil Nazis.
Yeah,
Look at me. I'm a hero.
Problem was, he'd been doing it so long, people knew that was not true.
I knew they were coming down the pipe. I've been watching them for ages. Look at me. I'm a hero. You got to always turn it around that you're the hero, Zaron.
That is basically his leaning. You nailed it.
There you go.
So date of his arrest is May 29th, 1945. The war has just ended.
Yeah.
In Germany, and the passions are high. So he gets charged with the heinous crime of aiding and abetting the enemy, aka the Nazi war machine. His fellow countrymen and women want justice against men like him, and people are getting shot in the street, right? Yeah, so collaborators who profited enjoyed life as others lost theirs and lost everything that makes life worth living. It's kind of like a scales of justice thing, right?
Yeah.
So he gets taken to prison, luckily, and not shot in the street, and there he has to await trial for selling off the Dutch cultural history. But only he, at this point, only he knows his secret. Nobody thinks that they're forgeries because remember, everybody, all the art world said these are great. So revealing it will be his only way to get free, or at least save his life. But he still will have to face justice as a forger. So he sits there in solitary confinement for a good long time, thinking about how he's going to play this. He's working on your idea of like, how can I be the hero of like, oh yes, I'm a resistance fighter.
Yeah.
Well, eventually he decides to tell the truth. But this is because of his interaction with this man named Joseph Pillar, who was an actual resistance fighter. And not just that, he was a former tailor. He was a Jewish man who was like now an officer in the reconstituted Dutch army. And he's overseeing efforts to get justice against collaborators. And they keep talking and meeting. And Pillar takes an interest in his case and starts investigating Van Meegeren while he's awaiting trial. Pillar eventually wins his trust. And Van Meegeren, admits to him that he sold the painting to Goring, but it was a fake. It was a fraud.
Yeah.
Which delights this former resistance fighter that he was able to trick the great art collector of the Nazis.
Right.
This also shows Van Meegeren the way to free himself. I am a resistance fighder.
Yeah.
I tricked you. I'm going to focus on Goring, not me.
Don't look at what I did a long time ago doing this.
Look at Goring, not me. I'm over here. I'm just an artist. But Goring, man, that guy's terrible.
He's the devil.
So by the time his trial starts, Van Meegeren, he makes his choice. He decides to confess his art crimes to save his life. During the trial, when he's confronted with actual photographic evidence of Hermann Goring holding the Vermeer masterpiece, Van Meegeren tells the judge and the court, quote, "The picture in Goring's hands is not, as you assume, a Vermeer of Delft, but actually a Van Meegeren. I painted the picture." Now remember, he'd done such a good job with his forgery, he'd fooled not only the notable art critics, but his forgery fooled the microscope examinations, the X-ray tests. There's no one in the court who believes him. The painting is clearly authentic.
That's amazing.
He painted too well. So even after he confesses the truth, no one will believe him. He's now about to be doomed by his own forgery. The irony is profound. He'd done too good of a job, right? So he's going to lose his life because he's too good of a forger. So his claims that he's a forger becomes major news story of the day in the Netherlands, but also Europe at large. And could this possibly be true? The newspapers are basically wondering. So in his desperate attempt to save himself from his own forgery, Van Meegeren demands that he be given a chance to prove that indeed he could forge the masterpiece. The judge is curious. He relents.
Yeah, why not?
He's like, a known Vermeer masterpiece? So he then, does a little research, meets with some people, and he selects a known Vermeer lost masterpiece. And he selects that one. He says, okay, forge this one, and I want it to be tested, and we can see, if you can do what you're saying, that you can create a forgery that will beat the experts.
Right.
So now he's got a strange twist of face. Like, we want you to do a crime to prove you didn't do a crime.
Incredible.
But not only that was a crime that he was allowed to perpetrate because, as an art forger, he developed this interesting habit that when he was painting, he liked to drink a lot and smoke opium.
Wait.
So he said that if I'm going to do this forgery, I have to do it the way I do forgery, so I'm going to need to be drunk and high. The judge is like, that's fair. So now Van Meegeren is allowed to drink and smoke opium in his jail cell as he paints a forgery to prove his innocence. And this goes on for months.
Yeah, because he can't just I bang him out in a week.
Yeah, exactly. And he's like, so it takes me a couple months and I'm high the whole time. So I'm going to need a lot of opium and I'm going to need a bunch of booze. And the judge is like, get him a bunch of opium, get him some booze.
Well, and that he makes the statement, actually, I forged these. Gasp.
Yeah,
and then now everything they do, gasp. The papers must have loved it.
So, I always also picturing trying to sell that to a judge, hey, Your Honor, I have to be twisted if this is going to work. The judge is like, makes sense to me. Give the prisoner all the booze and opium he needs. So Van Meegeren, he's given months to work, and he's allowed to select his materials. They go and they source out everything he would need. And then he gets an oven so he can bake the paintings, his whole technique, everything. Yeah. They're okay, whatever you need. But then to make sure that, he's actually doing this and he's not just going to hand it off to somebody else and they're going to slip it through the prison window.
Right.
There are court-appointed witnesses who have to watch him the entire time.
What a job.
They sit there in a gallery of chairs, I imagine, just watching him work. But, as also there's reporters, some reporters from French papers and Dutch papers, they're allowed to visit the prison cell because everybody's kind of digging the story now. It's just getting crazier and crazier. So they also get to watch the master forger work. But the judge wants to keep some things under wraps because they're going to need to go and trick the experts.
Right, exactly.
So this whole process is going along, but you know what? Rather than me tell you about the whole process, Elizabeth, I'd like you to close your eyes.
My eyes are closed.
And I'd like you to picture it. The year is 1945. World War II is over, and the world is rebuilding from the destruction of the years of horrifying violence, the untold cruelty. And there, in the months between July and December, the now infamous art forger Han Van Meegeren is laboring as fast as he can to save his own life with a brand new forgery. The judge in the trial has selected a lost Vermeer entitled Jesus Among the Doctors, also known as Young Christ in the Temple. At the moment, you, Elizabeth, are waiting for a prison door to be opened. A turnkey approaches. The jingle-jangle of his keys has an arrhythmic quality. His footsteps smack against the cold stone floor and softly echo against the damp and equally cold stone walls. He takes his time getting to you. Finally, he sets the key in lock. The prison doors open. He indicates you are to follow him down this long hallway. You do as instructed. Your heels tap against the same damp, cold stone floor. After a short walk, you are brought to a viewing area outside the cell of the infamous art forger, Han Van Meegeren. A pair of court-appointed witnesses are already seated in the makeshift gallery of chairs. You nod politely at them and you take a seat. And there, with the others, seated outside his prison cell, you watch the art forger work. You study his hand as it pushes brush against canvas. After a while of watching, you scribble in your notepad because you, Elizabeth, are a reporter for a Dutch newspaper, sent there to witness the creation of this forgery. After an hour of working, Van Meegeren takes a break from his painting, and he returns to the workshop section of his prison cell. The infamous art forger hums an old tune to himself. You watch as he grinds mortar and pestle to create more paint. With the ancient pigments and the linseed and lilac oils, he mixes up medieval colors that he will need to pull off his forgery. You dutifully watch him as he works. You scribble some notes in your notepad. Your pen moves quickly. When you look back up, you marvel at the progress he's made so far. The painting is barely half done, but it's coming together. You can see the work in progress. It's like looking back in time to the days of the old Dutch masters. But you are not wholly convinced this alleged master forger is indeed the real deal. So you watch him work, hoping to catch something or see something that might convince you. He returns to the canvas and applies the newly mixed paints with the ancient pigments and oils. You focus on his hand as he hums to himself again. You watch the forgery coming to life. You scribble more notes in your pad. The longer you watch, the more impressed you are. He certainly is a talented painter. But is he what he claims to be? You can't be certain. Your editor certainly will not be happy to hear that. They expect results. They expect answers. They expect you to have a conclusive and exclusive evidence of a forgery or not. However, if you're being honest, you just can't tell. Then you hear your stomach grumble. It's hungry for dinner. You realize how long you've been in this cold, damp Dutch prison. And then you see Van Meegeren get up to pack his opium pipe. It's not the first time he's done that today. In fact, earlier you thought you caught a secondhand high. Now, when the smell of the burning opium reaches your nostrils, you're like, yep, it's time for me to go. Time for you to go scare up some dinner. So you'll just have to wing it and come up with a story based on the notes you've taken. Perhaps in the end, you'll just flip a coin and decide if he's the real deal or not. Who knows? Okay, so since you couldn't decide,
yes.
You're no art expert.
No.
You're just a damn good writer.
Yes.
What are you going to do? Meanwhile, this goes on, the opium smoking, the drinking, the art forging, and finally in December of 1945, Van Meegeren is finished with his forgery. He and the artwork are brought back before the judge and the court. Art experts and scientists are called in to study the alleged forgery. They're not told it's a forgery. They're just told, like, can you authenticate this painting?
Right.
Microscopes, x-rays are once again used to test the work. Brushstroke analysis is performed. They call in the great art critic who'd been tricked multiple times now by Van Meegeren, good old Dr. Abraham Bredius.
Oh, Abe, don't do it.
He's called in to verify the work, and he's not told of the provenance or that there's a possibility that it could be a forgery. Instead, he just studies the work, unaware that it's been painted by Van Meegeren. The man who, by the way, is nicknamed the Pope of Vermeers is conned yet again.
You're kidding.
But it's worse than that, Elizabeth.
Oh, man.
This cat declares, in perhaps one of the most embarrassing moments for an art critic in art critic history, quote, "It is a wonderful moment in the life of a lover of art when he finds himself suddenly confronted with a hitherto unknown painting by a great master."
Oh, brother.
That pretty much seals the deal.
Yeah.
After his careful examination and this larger panel of experts and scientists who were also tricked, they determined that the forgery is indeed a masterpiece, a true Vermeer. Boom, he's done it again. Wow. He's tricked the art world one final time.
Oh my God.
And he's free from the death sentence. The judge rules, bang, bang, case dismissed, acquit this guy, lets him off.
Yeah.
However, justice is not done with him because he's still a fraud. So one who conned buyers out of millions and millions of dollars. He will still have to pay for his art crime. So he's immediately brought up on charges of art forgery.
Interesting.
Van Meegeren is eventually tried, convicted, and sentenced to how long? 1 year in prison for all of his art crimes.
With no opium and no ovens.
Yes, none of that. No, he's going to have to just white knuckle it at this point. The sentence for his art forgeries obviously is far lighter than his previous death sentence.
Sure, exactly.
But he's still fearing going to prison because once you, as you pointed out, no opium. He'll be like, having to go through the craziest withdrawals there is. And also he's a pretty serious alcoholic at this point. So
oh God, you kind of wish they would have been like, yeah, you know what? We'll call it even.
Yeah, no, not me. I don't. So anyway, before his official time in prison is scheduled to begin in 1947, he suffers a heart attack in November and then another one, and he drops dead from the second heart attack. He was 58 years old in December of 1947 when he dies. And this is before he starts his prison sentence. So he never actually faces justice.
Wow.
Yeah, no, there's one strange result of all of his new fame as the art forger who'd conned Hermann Goering, as well as the Pope of Vermeers. It turns Van Meegeren into a national folk hero. He becomes this like bad boy of the art world. Like, he conned Goering. Yeah, I get him. And of course, he also conned Breedis. Ha ha, right? So, and also, I found this one detail I loved. When Goering was, who at this point is still alive and still on trial and about to, do the Nuremberg justice, he gets informed that the Vermeer that he coveted and loved and used as proof of Aryan superiority was actually a fake. And I found a contemporaneous account that said, quote, Goering looked as if for the first time he had discovered that there was evil in the world.
Oh, God.
Him being tricked. That's the evil in the world.
I wouldn't have told him before I brought the painting in front of him and set it on fire. Make him watch it burn.
And then you tell him?
And then you tell him,
after he has like a near heart attack himself.
Moron. This is fake.
So, and also I should clarify, it wasn't just the Dutch who loved him at this point. Over in France, the newspapers have been covering the trial and its results, and they love that Van Meegeren had conned so many highfalutin art folks with his, quote, swindle of the century.
Right.
And the French absolutely loved that he'd conned the Germans, who believed themselves to be the true cultural snobs of Europe. The French were like, we take back our title. So, of course, there's one other legacy of his crimes I should point out. The art world was forced to determine which of the reported lost Vermeers were authentic, which were forgeries, as well as a number of other great Dutch artists who I didn't mention, who he was also forging, master artists like Pieter de Hock, right? So, this went on for a long time. Like in 2011, his forgery of another Dutch painter's work called The Procuress was finally determined to be a fake by art historians.
2011.
From the BBC show Fake or Fortune.
Love that show.
Yeah, I thought you did.
Love that show.
That's why I wanted to bring it up. They busted him out, and that's like one of the last of his forgeries to be unmasked.
Dang.
It was a super slow process. Like, it took him 20 years to determine that two of the Van Meegeren's Vermeer forgeries were fakes. So there's one called The Smiling Girl and another called The Lace Maker. They were both downgraded from being Vermeers to being possibly a work of a student or follower of Vermeer. The studio of Vermeer, exactly. And then finally, fake as all hell. Totally a fraud perpetrated by Van Meegeren. And that's how we come back to the official total of 36 known Vermeers.
That's incredible.
Yes, and also his son, by the way, was also a painter. Van Meegeren's son was a painter. He started doing forgery of his dad's works.
Of his dad?
Because people started collecting Van Meegeren's because it was this like, oh, he's this national folk hero. So he starts banging out his own forgeries of his dad's stuff.
Oh my God.
Now, just to be totally clear and put everything on the table, I don't think Van Meegeren was a folk hero outlaw. You know I like folk hero outlaws.
Sure.
This guy wasn't, because as you pointed out, you can't pal around with Nazis and enjoy the spoils of war and earn our respect.
Right.
He's no one to be celebrated if you know what all he did. Like, also, there was something I hadn't mentioned yet. He once signed a book that was gifted to Hitler, like Dear Fuhrer, this is for you kind of thing.
Big no.
Yeah, so he was a bad man, and not a bad man in the good way.
Like a bad man.
Exactly. But I do see why
he was scum.
In the post-war period, why the Dutch and the French would celebrate him the way that they did, because they wanted to get back the emotional reclamation.
You're looking for any victory where
exactly.
You can find
So when
it.
you see him celebrated, don't be too harsh in judgment of the French and the Dutch. They needed to get back and have something something to hold.
Needed a W.
So there you go. What's our ridiculous takeaway here, Elizabeth?
Once again, every time we talk about these forgers, they are very skilled artists.
You think, man, if you can do this.
You can do this if you weren't just mimicking. But here, he is so skilled in a method and a school that is no longer in favor.
Yeah. And he then doesn't push himself to try new things.
Right.
Or have anything to say.
Right.
He's just like, I like that money.
If he
I
were
like
to
nice dinners.
take those skills and apply them to something that was wholly his own, that would be incredible. But all of these forgers, they're so good. They're great artists.
Totally.
But, they're unoriginal.
And
Zaron, what's your ridiculous takeaway?
Whoa, thank you.
I wanted to stop you right there.
I'm impressed.
I know, me
so
too.
Considerate.
I'm so impressed.
Mine is a little
with myself.
simpler. I always find it funny that the art forgers, when they become famous, are always forged by somebody else.
Yes.
We saw that with Elma Tahiri or Hori. I mean, it's just constantly, like, I guessed it when I was reading it. I'm like, I know somebody's forging him. And it turned out to be his own son. So,
it's inevitable.
Yeah, so the whole father-son relationship stayed weird in the Van Meegeren family. So there you go. You in the mood for a talkback to wash this all down?
I love talkbacks.
Talkbacks. Oh my God, did he just say that?
OMG.
Hi, I'm Kim. I'm from the Virginia-North Carolina state border. I am too young to be elderly, and I'm too old to be young, and I don't understand half of what happens in the world today with computers and the way words are pronounced now, like button and important rather than button and important. It's hard, but you take me back to my comfort zone, how to disappear. I learned it from watching you, Botany 500. I love you guys. Thank you for being familiar and comforting.
Yes.
It's our pleasure.
Oh, you've nailed it with the button.
Oh, yeah.
Important.
Elizabeth constantly mentions that.
Grinds my gears.
Yeah. Just focus on the Botany 500. Let it all wash away.
Exactly.
Well, thank you for the talk, man. That was a joy. And always, you can find us online at Ridiculous Crime on the social medias. And also now we have a new account, The Ridiculous Crime Pod on YouTube. Please go like and subscribe. Tell a friend. Leave a comment. We and the interns enjoy them, so please do that. Also, we have our website, ridiculouscrime.com, which recently was named a Michelin award-winning site. Although we didn't get a star. We did win what's known as the Bib Gourmand Award, so that's good.
That's
right?
great.
That's fun.
That's fun for us.
Also, we love to hear your voices in the talkbacks, as you can tell. So please go to the iHeart app, download it, leave a talkback. Maybe we'll hear your voice here. And you can email us if you want at ridiculouscrime@gmail.com. Please start the email, Dear Producer D. Recently, we received an email that I'd like to read just some highlights from. It was sent by a young listener, an 11-year-old named Calvin. He wrote, check it, Dear Producer Dave and everyone else, love your show, so funny. I live in Asheville, North Carolina. One of my favorite episodes is the Zime Badoing episode and the AI music episode. I especially love the picture it with the 60-year-old pizza lady. That was a good one, Elizabeth. Now, thank you, Calvin. We just wanted to send a shout out to you and your Asheville Empire lacrosse team, the Carolina Redwoods. Thanks for writing us, Calvin. We always appreciate it. And allow me to say, go Redwoods. Okay, that's all I got for y'all. Thanks for listening, and we will catch you next crime. Ridiculous Crime is hosted by Elizabeth Dutton and Zaron Burnett. Produced and edited by our resident apothecary to the stars, Dave Koostin. And starring Annalise Rutger as Hoodith. Research is by our favorite Dutch master killer from the Wu-Tang Clan, Marissa Brown. Our theme song is by the Ridiculous Crime House Band and noted collectors of souvenirs, novelties, party tricks, Thomas Lee, and Travis Dutton. The host wardrobe provided by Botany 500. Guest hair and makeup by Sparkleshot. Executive producers are honorary ridiculous historians of the Dutch Resistance, Ben Bolin and Noel Brown.
Ridiculous crime.
Say it one more time.
Ridiculous crime.
Ridiculous Crime is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.